Welcome to the Dream Journal. From the studios of KSQD in Santa Cruz, the Dream Journal is a weekly show where we explore the power of nighttime dreams through conversations with dream experts and with listeners like you.
In the house behind, the life you find is something understood. So there's love, those vital
A dream can be meaningful even if you don't know what it means. I wanted to introduce our guest today. Do sunspots, solar flares, and geomagnetic activity affect our dreams? Do they affect our minds, emotions, behavior, and even our consciousness? Our guest, Dr. Annani Kelley, has research to show that it does. Annani will also read from her latest book of poetry, Somnia de Fin Mundi, Dreams of the End of the World. I am your host, Katherine Bell of Experiential Dreamwork, and welcome to the Dream Journal. Annani, so good to have you on the show. You recently got your PhD from Sophia University, and you are the founder of heliopsychology. Your dissertation focused on the influence of space weather on sleep and dream states, and you also have the book of poetry, which I mentioned,
Yes.
Somnia de Fin Mundi. So, Annani, So I'm glad to have you back on the show. You were on about a year ago, and we were all excited about your information. What was it? And but you hadn't finished your PhD, but now
That's
you have
right.
finished it, so we get to hear the results. So
Yes,
let's
that's right. I was really hesitant, because I hadn't finished writing the results, and because of that, I couldn't really give too much away. So my research really builds on the past, I want to say it's like 70 years now,
Wow.
of heliobiology studies. So there's tons of research out there that show how space weather, which I will just refer to from now on as SGMA.
What does that stand for? Space?
It stands for solar and geomagnetic activity.
Okay, that's GMA.
So
Thank you.
SGMA. So showing that SGMA influences and affects our whole bodies, from hormone production to brain waves to heart rate variability, digestion, headaches, pain. A lot of these heliobiological studies also looked at the prevalence of aggression, homicide, terrorist acts, psychiatric admissions. There's some fascinating research about the axial age and solar minimum and solar maximum. And so what I did was kind of coalesce that, because what happens in the body also happens in the mind, which is why biological psychology exists. We know that the body and mind work together in tandem to influence the overall psychological aspects. Now, because I had to keep the focus of my dissertation narrow, I focused on dream states. And so I looked at nightmares, non-nightmare aggressive dreams, because a lot of individuals did have violent or aggressive dreams that were not nightmares. And that's really interesting, especially considering some of the material in their dreams, which would be considered nightmarish by quite a few people, but they didn't have that feeling.
So it's just defined by the dreamer themselves whether it was a nightmare or not?
Yes,
okay,
yes.
that's good.
So they defined that. It also looked at the prevalence of dream bizarreness, which built on a study by Lipnicki, where he did that with his own dreams and SGMA. Also quality of sleep, how well individuals slept, and extraordinary dreams, such as dreams where a person is lucid or aware that they're dreaming, and psychic dreams, past life dreams, precognitive dreams, but I kind of just lumped those into psychic dreams. And then the SGMA variables I looked at were sunspots, the sunspot number, which does change on a daily basis. Solar flaring, but I only looked at solar flares of M1 or greater. We do get a lot of C flares, but those tend to be kind of normal background during solar maximum. So M
Which is where we're
flares.
at right now. We're at solar maximum right now.
Yeah, we're coming out of it though. We're in the downward phase of that,
Okay.
and geomagnetic activity.
Mhm.
And so my study period lasted for 71 days, I want to say, and had 92 participants
Mhm.
for a total of 4,735 dreams.
Wow.
And each one of those solar variables had different influences. So nightmares were largely influenced across the board by solar flares, sunspots, and geomagnetic activity. Bizarreness, like the prevalence of bizarreness, this was rated on a 1 through 5, like Likert scale created by Lipnicki in his study. The bizarreness was only influenced by solar flares, not by sunspots, not by geomagnetic activity. Psychic dreams were influenced by geomagnetic activity, but not the other variables.
Hmm.
Non-nightmare aggressive dreams were also influenced. I want to say by all of those, but it may have only been 2 of those. I'd have to look at my results again.
It's
So
interesting. So but the different kinds of dreams are
yes,
responding to different kinds of
yeah,
activity.
it was
Oh.
really fascinating to see. And and I'll be honest, I didn't expect to see these results at all. I kept thinking during the whole time, I'm just a crazy person. It turns out I wasn't a crazy person. Now, quality of sleep was influenced by solar flares and sunspots. So when those increased, the quality of sleep diminished. And
Okay.
that makes sense,
Uh-huh.
because your body's receiving more light,
Uh-huh.
and that's going to disrupt melatonin
Hmm.
and then so on your sleep.
And it's not
So
just in the visible, right? Because during a solar flare is not just the visible. I mean, because there's not a visible increase in light when there's a solar flare. It's not in the visible spectrum.
is there,
There
because
is?
I have had many people tell me that during, like, say, an X flare, when we have an X flare, I'll have my partner say to me, the sun seems so much brighter today, because it actually is.
Really
That
interesting.
solar flare does create a bump in the total solar irradiance for that day. So there is actually an increase in the brightness of
Huh.
the sun during solar flaring. How long that lasts depends on, of course, the how long that solar flare lasts. So some solar flares are really short, impulsive flares, but some are long duration that
Mhm.
that can last hours, 6 hours, 8 hours. So yeah, there is an increase in brightness. If people notice it, some do, some don't.
So I mean, can I keep asking some questions here?
Yeah.
So, so if the sun's a little bit brighter because of the solar flare and it lasts like 6 or 8 hours, and would that disrupt my sleep that same night? I mean,
Yes.
okay. So, but what if there's a
Yeah.
solar flare happening at night
I
when I'm
saw it.
already dark?
Yeah, but the earth is still getting all that energy.
The energy,
So,
right?
and it's more intense on the daytime side, but it disperses around the globe. So, yeah, and because the solar flares, happen all throughout the day,
Mhm.
I did have to. Solar flares are the time that they give is always in UTC, which is Universal Time Coordinated.
Mhm.
Um, for those who are in the West Coast of the United States, that is right now 7 hours ahead of us is UTC.
Mhm.
Now, since my participants were all around the globe, I had to adjust, make sure that they were in line with UTC. So that was part of it to make sure. But yeah, the effect was seen whether it was night or day.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Wow. I mean, I guess that radiation impacts our atmosphere, and then it
Yes,
would be
exactly.
transmitted all the way around the globe. Like, yeah. Okay. Like I know that aurora are very much stronger during solar flares, and those only
Yeah.
happen at the poles. But we're finding these other effects are global around, are all the way around
Well,
the world.
they mostly happen at the poles, but depending on the strength of the geomagnetic storm, you can have that aurora actually go near to the equator.
Right.
So, in the past couple years, we had a couple strong geomagnetic storms where the aurora was visible in San Diego, and that's amazing.
Wow. That is amazing. Right.
And I do want to point out, for anybody, who's listening, that the way that the statistical analysis that I used was Pearson correlation coefficients. So correlation is not causation. I do want to point that out.
Yeah.
But the strength of the correlation was very high, with these correlations for each one of them.
Okay, interesting. So I understand that you kind of started this research because you had noticed a correlation yourself in your own dreams to activity, to space
Yes,
weather, and all that.
I noticed it in my dreams, but the first thing that happened, and the reason why I began studying this, like as a hobby, in 2011, so it's been like 15 years now,
Yeah.
was because I have temporal lobe epilepsy, and there was a period of a day or two where I was having a cluster of seizures that was unusual for me. And as I was recovering, I was real tired. I was really exhausted. So I was just laying on the couch watching the news the next day or the day after. And there was a news report about very bright aurora. Apparently, we had solar flares and really
Ah.
strong geomagnetic storms. And I just thought, I wonder
Mm.
if there's a relationship between those things. And
Right.
boom,
Yeah.
15 years later, here I am. So,
Okay, interesting.
yeah.
So your study was specifically about sleep and dreams,
Yes,
but you're
yes.
also talking about these waking life
Yeah,
things that are affected by the solar activity as well, the SGMA.
yeah. Well, yeah, again, my research does build on, like 70 years of heliobiological studies. So there's lots of waking life things that do occur. Like I said, homicide rates go up during solar maximum years, aggression.
Hmm.
And this is an interesting thing. So in solar max years, we see more negative personal attributes blossom,
Huh.
for lack of a better phrase. But during solar minimum years is when we see more creativity, more
Mhm.
philosophical endeavor, more scientific discovery, more spiritual advancements. So there is like a calm
Mm.
and then a not calm that
Okay.
mirrors the solar activity.
So this is this visible then in history in terms of like
Yes,
politics and wars and
yes,
things like
yep.
that?
And the stock market.
The stock market.
Yeah,
Wow.
so
Okay.
during solar maximum years, we tend to see more stock market volatility.
Uh-huh.
And during solar minimum years, the stock market tends to be, calmer. I mean, of course, there's a lot of different external variables that can affect these things, whether it's war or whatnot. Um, but yeah, it's present in our daily lives. We are built of stardust.
Right.
Carl Sagan, was fond of saying that we are, I
Yeah.
believe it's like 97% of the human body is stardust.
Mm.
And when you think about that, the reason for that is because we all the creatures on this planet, all the planets and the sun originated in the same stellar nursery, which became our solar system.
Right, right. So
So,
the only at 3%, maybe that's not. It would have been some hydrogen that was out in a cloud and never got back
yeah,
to the star.
interstellar
Uh,
weirdness.
uh-huh. So we come from the stars.
Yeah,
I'm curious about, so you mentioned that we're coming out of solar max.
yeah,
Like I know it's not like a door opening and closing, that there's a sinusoidal wave, that
that's right.
there's like more activity during max and less during the min, so it's not like a hard and fast. But if you go to like the opposite side of the curve, how many years has it been since we've been in solar max as far as the level we're at now, if I'm explaining this?
Let's see. So the solar max years do vary.
Uh-huh.
This one has been kind of strange. I have seen during the past couple years people say we were in solar max and this year, no, it was this year, no, it was this year.
Right. Well, I understand you
Um,
can't diagnose it till after the fact, really, because the
yeah, and
numbers.
I want to say I was looking, I used Grok earlier, as a matter of fact, to get the solar max years for every solar cycle, and it provided it, so that was amazing. Um, I believe Grok said that the solar max for this cycle was at the end of 2024.
Okay.
Let me just double
That was the
check.
peak of sunspot activity.
Let me just double check
Yeah,
that.
sure.
Um, which is interesting because my dissertation took place during that time. My dissertation was during the solar max, and I did not plan for that. Yeah, so the end of 2024, the official solar max was October of 2024,
Okay.
and my dissertation study took place between November and January,
Okay.
so 24 into 25.
All right. So a
Yeah.
couple years, it's been a year and a half since then, a year and a half before. It's been so just for like reference, while you have that reference up there, when was the last solar min? Like when was the is that
Oh, that
incorrect?
I only got the solar max years, but if memory serves, solar minimum would have been like 2018-ish.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah,
Okay.
2018 or maybe 2019 or 2020.
Trying to think of like what's been going on in my life all this time,
I
and
mean,
like
the past 10 years of my life have been so insane. So I'm like, time? What is time?
right. Right, exactly. Well, and
Yeah.
it's interesting to think about just connecting to political events and the worldwide events, and looking forward to going into another solar min where things
Another period of calm, and
of
hopefully it'll
calm.
stay calm, you
That
know.
will be lovely.
But here is something to point out. Solar minimum doesn't necessarily mean that we won't have space weather effects. The Carrington event was in the downward phase of the cycle.
Oh,
And the
tell us about the
Carrington
Carrington event.
So
Yeah.
the Carrington event was that huge event that was observed by the scientist Carrington. And that is, at least as far as we know, since we've been measuring sunspots and solar cycles, the largest solar event we've had. And that was 1859. What was his first name? Richard. I want to say it was Richard Carrington, but I could be mistaken. So in September of 1859, he was observing sunspots, sketching them, and it just God was shining on him that day because as he was observing the sunspots, he observed these massive flares,
Huh.
which estimates would be that the Carrington event was around an X45. And that is insane.
Okay.
So we had aurora that was so bright from the geomagnetic storm that came after those CMEs hit, um, so bright that it woke up miners on the West Coast. They thought it was daytime.
Huh.
Telegraph wires spontaneously
Wait a
caught
minute. It woke up people on the. How do you mean? It was nighttime, but the sun was so bright that the
the
reflected light around
aurora.
the.
So
Oh,
when
the
the
auroras.
aurora happened, the aurora
Wow.
was so
Woke
bright
them
it
up.
woke up the miners.
Yeah.
The telegraph offices, a lot of the telegraph offices reported sparks and fires
Wow.
from the power that was coming in because when we have a strong enough geomagnetic storm, it could create induced current in the ground. So there was more
Hmm.
current coming through,
Hmm.
and some operators had to disconnect their telegraphs from their main source of power. And I read one newspaper report from that time that where telegraph wire or telegraph operators stated they were running on aurora power. How amazing is that? So we haven't experienced anything
But
similar to that.
just to finish the thought about the Carrington
Yeah,
event, that was during a solar min, right?
that
Was
was
that
in
what
the
you were?
downward phase.
Uh,
So it wasn't
uh,
solar max and it wasn't solar min.
solar
It
min.
was kind
Okay.
of in the middle. So we still can have those events.
I see. I see.
When it's not solar maximum, they just tend to
Mm.
be more rare. I am kind of curious though, if we do get more stronger events when they're kind of isolated like that away from both min and max. But
Hmm.
that's research for another day, of course.
Oh, okay, of course. Yeah, there's
Yeah.
always more to research. So what can we do about this? Like, should we like sleep with tinfoil on our heads, or I mean, is there? I
I
mean,
don't think
joking, of
so.
course, but
As a matter of fact, I kind of think it's wonderful. You know, we are every living organism, everything on this planet evolved in conjunction with these cycles. This is just a natural
Mhm.
part of being human. Same thing like we evolved with rain, We evolved with wind.
Yeah.
We evolved with eating food. And this is just part of, you know, of who we are in our evolution. And there's even a research showing that some of these events may have contributed to our growth in consciousness. So there was a geomagnetic excursion, which means the magnetic field was weaker, which means any solar events or geomagnetic storms would have been stronger, um, called the Lachamp event, and that was around 40,000 years ago. And during that same time, we saw a growth in creativity, and a growth in communication. So there is a really strong tie to consciousness evolution. And my theory is that consciousness itself is an electromagnetic force, maybe even a fundamental force in the universe.
Mhm.
And if that's the case, then yes, our consciousness is going to be directly tied to everything happening on
Mhm.
the sun and the magnetosphere around the earth.
Wow. Okay. Well, this is a lot, and I want to talk some more about consciousness, but we need to take a break here,
Yep.
and this is something that we're going to get into in the second half. It's this idea of consciousness and how consciousness is outside of our body. Let's
I think it's outside and inside.
outside and inside.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. I want to get into the details of that, but why don't you just take a moment here to tell us about your poetry book, and we'll hear from some of the poetry after the break,
Okay.
and but why don't you just tell us about your book and what it means to you.
Yeah. So this was an interesting book for me. I have to preface it by saying that I am writing also a book on heliopsychology, but I got stymied and I had to stop, um, because I realized part of the way through writing the introduction, I'm just in the introduction still, um, that it was missing something. And I realized what it was missing was soul. It was missing harmony. It was missing music. I do have a struggle with academic books. They tend to be too dry and too academic. So my heliopsychology book is not going to be that. I am going to incorporate more uh, metaphorical and poetic language into it because I feel like it should be for everyone.
Mhm.
And it is a book about our interactions with our universe. And to me, that is musical. And so it needs to be kind of that way. So I had to stop. I'm like, what is wrong with me? Oh, what I really need to do is get back into my poetry for a minute. I really need to get back in that space of metaphor and analogy and lyricism. And it was around that time that I discovered that Kindle publishing was free.
Mm.
So my first two poetry books were published by a teeny tiny little Australian publisher. And this one, I wanted to have more freedom of movement. I wanted to, choose, because he largely chose the poems that went into the first two books. I gave him a bunch and he's like, I want these, and then I want these. But this one, I got to choose, and then I wanted to add it the photography. So my book is called Somnia Defina Mundi, and that is Latin. It means dreams of the end of the world. So my most prevalent recurring dream is dreams about the end of the world.
Mm.
And there's love poetry, there's spiritual poetry, and of course there's poetry about the end of the world. But all of those are tied to dreams I have had in some way or another. Um, which leads me to say the next point. Some of these dreams were based on precognitive dreams. So I do have precognitive dreams. And that's one of my favorite things to look into and to research is the prevalence of individuals with precognitive dreams. And not just the prevalence, but the veracity of them. How many of them actually did come to pass, or people with past life dreams as well, because there's a couple in here that are also based on past life dreams. How many of those people who had past life dreams were able to verify
Mhm.
aspects of those dreams
Right.
as real? Excuse me. So that's what this poetry book is. It is my little hymn
Mhm.
to my dreams and to the divine. I do have a relationship with the divine infinite, as I call it. And so I had to do this first. And so
Mhm.
it includes photography as well, and
Beautiful.
yeah,
I
I
saw
mean,
some of the
it
photography. It's
and
gorgeous.
it just came out,
Mhm.
at the beginning of April, and I love it, and all the photography is mine, even the cover photography is mine,
Mm.
which I used a C-Star S30 telescope to take the images of the sun, just in case anybody is curious about that.
So that was your own, the sun was your own image, and then there's also the moon. It's like the
Yeah,
sun and the
that's
moon
my image
crashing
too.
together
Yeah.
is what it looks
Yep.
like.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Very cool. Okay. Annani Kelley, thank you so much. We were talking about space weather as well as about her poetry book. And if you want to hear more about consciousness, I'm going to definitely ask about that. And then we're going to see if we can fit in some poetry reading as well. We really want to find out what Annani Kelley really thinks. So stay tuned because it always gets more real after the break. So next week, tune in to hear from our guest, Alira Solara. It seems like we're on a space weather theme here. And Alira Solara has an intuitive channeled approach to dream interpretation, which she calls dream mapping and dream weaving. Her vision is to weave the collective shadow into remembrance with source. So we'll find out more about that next week. The Dream Journal is broadcast live from the KSQD studios in Santa Cruz and co-broadcast live in San Jose by KCXU, also up at KOWS in Sonoma. And we are a podcast everywhere on the Monday after the show. Full-length videos of the conversations can be found on Spotify and also on my YouTube page at Experiential Dreamwork. So we will be right back. You are listening to the Dream Journal, and I am Katherine Bell of Experiential Dreamwork. I'd like to send out a special welcome to our far-flung listeners. We are getting people from all over the world who are listening. So we have SoCal, Santa Cruz, Gilroy, Hayward, Fresno, Sacramento, Los Angeles, La Habra, California, Boardman, Oregon, Houston, Texas, Milwaukee, welcome Atlanta, Toronto, Ontario, Ocala, Florida, Ashburn, Virginia, Emmaus, Pennsylvania, and Quebec, Canada, and our loyal listener from Moscow, Russia. So glad to have you on the show. So really, I appreciate you listening and sharing interest in dreaming. Please follow the Dream Journal on your favorite podcast app, subscribe, and if you're moved to leave a review, it all helps us nudge that algorithm. Thank you so much for those generous ratings and reviews, and thanks for sharing episodes on your social media. You can follow us on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube by looking for @Experiential Dreamwork and hashtag The Dream Journal. But most importantly, I would like to encourage you to find a dream sharing buddy. There are people in your life right now who are interested in dreams, and there's nothing more valuable about dreaming than talking about dreams. So consider starting by saying, "Oh, I'm listening to this podcast about dreaming." Maybe you'll find that person to share your dreams with. All right, so we are here with Dr. Annani Kelley, who studies space weather and its influence on sleep, dreams, and so much more. She also has a fabulous book of poetry. And before the break, we were talking about consciousness. And I'd like to spend some more. It's one of my favorite conversations, actually. Well, what does consciousness even mean?
Mine too.
Yeah. And so I'd like you to say, I'd like you to hear you say some more about consciousness and your
All right.
understanding about that.
Sure. So, there are a lot of theories about consciousness. And I think one of the most prevalent theories at least in psychology right now, is what is called a materialistic view, or that consciousness is an emergent property from the brain, that the brain creates consciousness. I disagree with that. I think the brain is a receiver and conduit and filter for consciousness. We each have different brains, so we're each going to have our own experience of consciousness and our own perception of reality. So, my analogy for that is like a radio. If you have a radio, especially an analog radio, An analog radio does not create the radio waves that you hear. What it does is it pulls them down, or it it is able to tune into them.
Mhm.
Radio waves, not man-made ones, but radio waves, generally speaking, are a product of the electromagnetic spectrum. So the sun creates radio waves. So when we have a solar flare, it's also known as a radio blackout. It
Huh.
is causing distortions in the radio band frequency of the electromagnetic spectrum. So ham radio operators, for instance, will have difficulty during solar flares. Their ham radios will experience distorted um, signals and whatnot. So again, a radio does not create the radio waves. All it is the receiver. And that's my feeling about the brain, that the brain is a receiver for consciousness, and each of our brains is going to experience that consciousness individually. We're going to have different brain. I have temporal lobe epilepsy and MS, so my brain experiences reality a little bit differently, a lot differently,
Yeah.
considering. Um, and our brains are going to, the way we grow in the womb, the way our environment is, are all going to determine how our brains develop,
Mhm.
and how our brains will experience consciousness. There are some physicists out there, in fact, who do believe that consciousness is an electromagnetic property. And I am one of the people who believe that consciousness is an electromagnetic property, and that it may even be a fundamental force in the universe. The interesting thing is, I also believe that the reason why we cannot measure consciousness discreetly is because it is so prevalent, so everywhere, that we can't see the forest for the trees.
Mm.
That
Mm.
we can't isolate it because it's too big to isolate.
Mhm.
It's like isolating the universe. How can you do that? You can't isolate the universe. I mean, we can kind of see there's boundaries out there, but we haven't measured the whole thing. There's so much there to measure.
Mhm.
And I think that the universe itself is a physical manifestation of consciousness, of
Okay.
being, of becoming. Yeah.
Alright.
Yeah.
Okay, my brain's exploding. So this is great. This ties in with some things, thoughts I've had, and so I guess we get to so that if we are channeling consciousness and other beings channel consciousness, that we humans are then are somehow channeling more consciousness than like a tree would channel. Is
Do
that
we know that though? I
well?
mean,
That's the question I'm asking.
we
What do you
we
think about
we
that?
experience it as humans experience it, but we're not bees, we're not trees, so we have no idea exactly how a tree experiences reality. We
Mm,
we only can look at a tree and go, it has no consciousness, it's just wood, it has no brain.
right.
But we don't know because we're not the tree.
Hmm.
They may have a consciousness that is just baffling to us. We just don't know.
Well, I was just
But
hearing
but
this
a tree
podcast. Yeah, go
does
ahead. Yeah.
a tree does have an electromagnetic spectrum though,
Yes, it
right?
does. Right. Right.
So maybe they do have a consciousness that we just can't. It's so different from ours, we can't relate to it in any experiential way. There's no way for us to know that.
Okay.
So
And okay, right. Yeah, I was just listening to an interview with Michael Pollan, and talked about he's got that fabulous new book out, um, talking about that there's a that you can actually anesthetize plants.
yes, you
And
can.
so they have multiple stages of consciousness. Like you take a
Yes.
plant that's like that's like a, I guess it's like it eats flies or something. That sort of has a certain amount of movement to it, but it's still a
Hmm.
plant. It's definitely a plant. And then you can anesthetize it, and it won't respond to the fly. So
Well,
it's
and I've seen research where it talks about plants remembering. So like someone coming in and cutting a plant, and then the research, will monitor this plant and monitor the material it gives off, different the way it respirates, and so on and so forth. And that when a person comes back in, and that person who cut them initially,
Mhm.
it'll have almost what appears to be a fear response and give off more of these substances.
Okay.
So,
Wow.
I mean, again, we really don't know. There's so much we don't know. We only assume we know, but we don't know.
Okay. Right. And so but then there's like things like rocks that don't have any kind of growth. They don't
Well,
grow, they
because
don't
they're not
reproduce.
they're not living organisms.
Right.
So we're talking about living organisms.
But if consciousness is everywhere and everything, is it not
Yeah.
also then creating the substrate for the rocks? Like maybe it's more a consciousness, maybe more a basic than atoms, even like if atoms come from
That is
consciousness.
true. I don't, any more than like say, your hair is dead, right? So your hair, but then there's theories about consciousness and hair. I'm not going to get into that. Um,
Oh,
I
come on,
think
Annani, you
consciousness.
can. If you want to, this is the place to do it.
Well, there's that story about Samson, and he cut off his
Oh,
hair and his strength was gone.
true.
And I've heard like kind of indigenous folk tales about hair and consciousness, about hair being the source of power,
Uh-huh.
strength, wisdom, and even intuitive knowing. So
Mhm.
who
Mhm,
knows?
mhm.
But I don't know. Are can rocks have? I guess theoretically, because yeah, energy is moving through them. It's just going to be a different sort of consciousness.
Right.
If
Well,
we
they're kind of
can
made of
prevent,
energy. If energy
yeah,
and
yeah,
matter has a certain,
yeah, anything, everything is made of
everything. Well, like
atoms.
you're saying, the
Yeah,
universe, like trying to
yeah.
measure the universe, and if it's okay, but
Yeah, we're gonna
yeah,
go off. We're gonna go off. We could keep talking
it's
about
been
this
done.
forever.
We're off on it. Well, this is great though. This is the kind of thing that I really love, and I hope I get some good listener questions about this because I'd love to explore a little more. But I want to leave a little time here to maybe look
Yeah.
at some of your poetry.
Okay.
Is this a sound like a good place to switch to a little
Sure.
poetry? Okay.
So again, dreams of the end of the world.
Hmm.
And so this may be hard for some people to hear, but I am going to read a poem that is, in fact, one of the poems about the dream or about the end of the world. And I also want to say that these dreams were not always nightmares. In fact, most of the time they weren't.
Mm-hmm.
If anything, in the dream, when I was experiencing an apocalypse of any sort, and there's many forms of it, like an alien apocalypse, I've dreamt of that. I've dreamt of something entering the solar system that causes the orbits of all the planets to change,
Hmm.
and so we're all going to die.
Hmm.
But in all and then there's dreams of what I call the last great war, and those are horrible. But in every single one of these dreams, what I feel is a sense of honor
Mm.
to be able to witness such a huge global and human-wide change. And this poem kind of reflects that, as you will
Okay.
see. So this poem is called Song of Annihilation, Year of Joy. Minutes before the world ends, I hear trumpets, but they are not trumpets. There are women beating their breasts and infants crying nearby. But it is also the echo of men screaming somewhere to regroup, refuel, reload. And it is the cascade of lights exploding, fires igniting. But it is nothing except silence beneath the clouds which rain oil and blood upon the million frightened faces. Excuse me, the million frightened, upturned faces praying to God. Night falls, then a darkness so foreboding it chokes every throat, yet scorched by the thousand suns bursting then. And minutes before the world ends, I hear parties and music issuing from the condemned insane, wishing for one last Christmas, one last hymn and hallelujah, but there is none. With each new dawn, the twilight's yellow bile vomits up scarred landscapes of forgotten cities. The sun rises up, illuminating the blasted towers. Here beneath the eyes of my fingers, sorry little scavengers haunt the earth for mercy. A crust of bread, the note of a song, a miracle from God. the God they vanquished so long ago, trading for rubble. And minutes before the world ends, I pray my peace, but it is a psalm of thanksgiving for destruction. It is praise for the cleansing fire, but it is also the echo of men screaming something somewhere, drowned under the cries of my laughter and tears. And it is nothing but silence cradled by the clouds, which rains skin and bones, death and disease, upon the faithless who had forgotten God, yet call to him in their final hours.
Hmm. Oh, wow. Uh-huh. I can see how that would be a dream. I've had a lot of some really intense end of the world dreams.
Yes, it was. That one was
Mm-hmm.
really an intense
Mm-hmm.
end of the world dream.
Mm-hmm.
The last Great War, which was a global thermonuclear war.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
That would pretty much finish it.
Yeah, it would. It did. In the dream it did. But I was like, wow, I'm gonna die in a nuclear blast, and I think this is amazing. You know?
Well, there's something about death in the dream world. This is like kind of an ongoing conversation in my groups. It's like
Yeah.
because, violence and death and the end of things in a dream is not necessarily a bad thing.
No, it's not. In fact, you mentioned dying in dreams. I have died in dreams many, many, many times. And whenever that happens, it's amazing.
Mm.
Like I can't describe this. Like I'm free. I'm free from my
Oh,
body.
wow.
And then I end up seeing like the whole universe. I can, see everything and meet interdimensional beings and weird stuff. So yeah, dying in a dream doesn't bother me at all. Not at all.
Right. All right. And maybe who knows what it's going to be like to die, in our bodies
Yeah.
because, we don't know. Like there's this, of course, this biological fear of death because, if we weren't afraid of death, we would never grow up and have kids and the human race would be over. So this like, biologically it makes sense for us to be afraid of death.
Yeah.
But maybe there's nothing to be afraid of.
Personally, I don't think there is. I think that
Yeah.
the only fear someone might have is if they have regrets in this life, unfinished business,
Yeah. Yeah. Unfinished.
and maybe
Well,
those
yes.
fears carry over. So, who knows? We
Absolutely.
don't know. Yeah.
Right.
Lots
Right.
of
Well, and then
unknowns.
there's the quote that someone said I really resonate with. It said, "I'm not afraid of death. I'm afraid about how much it's going to hurt to get there."
That I just don't want to die with pain.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
not afraid of death. I just don't want to be in pain as I'm
Right.
dying
Right.
because I worry that that will remain in my consciousness, afterwards.
Yeah.
And so,
Well, there's something to that because I do sometimes wonder, like, if there's some of the trauma, like I kind of feel like I'm a traumatized person in a certain way, but and yet I don't, I have, I mean, since a child, since very young age, and yet I don't, not aware of any like specific abuse or trauma that I, happened in this life. But
yeah.
I wonder if the previous life, death, I'm wondering where it came from, or maybe I'm channeling it from outside of myself, like from people around me, or it's just this question of where this stuff comes from.
Are you familiar with the work by Stanislav Grof?
It's a little bit. What in particular are you talking about here?
So he developed a codex. I
Mm,
want to say that's what it is. That looks at a person consciousness, not just including the life that we remember in this body, but also their prenatal life and
mm,
their past life,
mm.
because he believes that some trauma is carried over
Okay.
from the past life. So some of the
Yeah.
work that he did involves that whole person, this life,
Mm,
past life,
mm.
prenatal life experience.
Interesting.
You might
All
want to check
right.
it out. Yeah.
So, Annani Kelley, this is an amazing conversation, really wide ranging, which is my
Yeah.
favorite thing to really just go deep and ask all the questions and
Coex.
my,
It's Coex. COEX. It just popped into my mind.
coax. Okay.
Coex.
Well, you exploded my brain, so thank you for that.
You're welcome.
So, if folks need to get in touch with you, should they contact me to contact you, or do you have a web page or
Um,
a way to get for folks to?
so I do have a YouTube channel, which I think you do have the link for that.
I do.
But if anybody wants to contact me, regarding like maybe collaborating on some research, or if they're
Hmm.
just, more interested about some of the SGMA FX, my email, they can email me, is dr_helio@mail.com. That's dr_helio@mail.com.
Gmail.com. Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much. It's been
You're
great
welcome.
to have this conversation, and let's keep in touch.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right. So thank you all for listening. The Dream Journal is produced at the studios in KSQD of Santa Cruz, and we are live every Saturday at 10 a.m. Pacific at ksqd.org. It spreads interest in dreaming when you subscribe, rate, and review. I am Katherine Bell. You can contact me at katherine@ksqd.org. You can follow Experiential Dreamwork and hashtag the Dream Journal on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and YouTube to keep up with the shows. I'd like to thank Rick Kleffel, hardworking engineer and music creator. Audio editing by Suki Westling, phones by Eric Nelson. Intro and outro pieces are both by Mood Science. And tomorrow morning, when you wake up, take a minute to write down your dream and bring it to the next Dream Journal.
You know that you might be the target. Know you're an upscale market. You know they've been tracking you from day one. Beware of the face that's familiar. It might be the face of your killer. Most people are shot by someone they know. There's a dot on you. There's a dot on you. You know that it's true. Care if you're through. There's a dot on